Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I am honored and feel very happy to join the Greens once again for your Congress at this critical moment in the evolution of our history. We used to say the history of the human species, but we can't use the word history anymore because we are in a very precarious situation. And nothing is more vital to the planet's future and our future than the issue of food, the issue that you have focused this Congress on. And there is no other party that can play the leadership role to shift the system away from the ecocidal and genocidal tendencies that have already taken such a high price from other species, the animals that have been referred to, but also our fellow human citizens. The industrial food system is not a food system. It is not designed to nourish and feed people. That is why it's not an accident that more than 1 billion people are permanently hungry. There used to be hunger localized in space and time, but 1 billion are permanently denied their right to food. And 2 billion who eat are denied their right to health, because what's being fed is not food. It is anti-food. Chemically contaminated food is not food. It's giving us the epidemic of diseases, like cancers. Every second person I know has a family relative who's dying of cancer right now. One of our members of the movement I started in India, Navdanya, came to see me yesterday. He said in a village next to his village, 23 people had cancer, 13 had died within a year. We are talking about a health epidemic we've never seen in the human community. And the globalized, industrialized system was never designed to bring health and nourishment to us. It was designed for control by literally 10 corporations, 5 controlling seed and 5 controlling trade. The so-called free trade rules are not free for other species, they're not free for animals, they're not free for humans, they're only about freedom for corporations to starve the poor, torture the animals, and leave the rest of us powerless by destroying democracy. Exactly 30 years ago, we had the tragedy of Bhopal in India. On the 2nd of December, it'll be the 30th anniversary. A remark was made about people saying food is not important. Why don't we talk about peace? But peace and food are related. I did a book called The Violence of the Green Revolution when I realized that the violence of Punjab was connected to the Green Revolution based on chemical farming, destruction of soil, of water, of farmers' livelihoods. Even Syria, which is seen as something separate from the way we do agriculture, is connected. In 2009, they had a severe drought. 800,000 people were displaced. 75% of the crop was finished. 85% of the livestock died. When people moved to the cities to protest, they were treated with violence. They armed themselves. Before you knew it, it became an anti-regime movement, and the rest of the story is theirs. But nobody connects us to the model of agriculture, the fragility of our systems, the climate havoc that is being created with industrial globalized agriculture as the biggest contributor. I wrote a book called Soil Not Oil a few years ago, showing that 40% emissions come from industrial agriculture, whether they're carbon dioxide from fossil fuels, or nitrogen oxide from the use of nitrate fertilizers, or methane from factory farming. And this is destabilizing agriculture across the world. Syria is just one example. And it's not bringing us food. It's such an inefficient system. We know that it takes 10 units of energy to produce 1 unit of energy as food in the industrial system, whereas ecologically, we can use 1 unit of energy to produce 2 units of food. And then we take grain that has been produced inefficiently and feed it to animals who were meant to be herbivores. That's why they're called herbivores. They want grass, not grain, not GM soya, not GM corn. That's not their diet. We use 10 units of protein as grain to feed the animals and get 1 unit of protein. So factory farming has to be stopped for many reasons. One of the reasons is it is behind the hunger and starvation on the planet. There are 3 ways in which hunger is in the design of industrial globalized agriculture. The first is that when you produce commodities, it isn't the rights of people to food that decides what will be grown, how it will be grown, where it will go. Profits decide it, and if there are more profits in animal feed, that's where the grain will go, not to the poor of the world. In spite of all the illusions that industrial farming is feeding the world, and now we need GMOs to feed the world, only 30% of the food people eat comes from industrial farms. 70% comes from small-scale farms, which need to be protected. "75% of the ecological destruction of the planet is caused by industrial agriculture. Biodiversity destruction, 75%. There was a conference in Leipzig in '95 that did the assessment because of industrial monocultures. 75% of the soil, 75% of the water. So if 30% of the food system is causing 75% destruction of the planet, if we take it to 40%, we will have finished the planet. And there will be no food on a dead planet, which is why the Greens must take up the food issue as their primary issue. If all that is grown is corn, GMO corn and soya, and it's diverted to animal feed, we will have hunger. If we destroy biodiversity, which is the source of nutrition, we will have malnutrition. There are only 2 applications of GMOs: herbicide tolerance and Bt crops. In 4 crops: corn, soya, canola, cotton. In my country, I have watched how GMO BT cotton pushed our farmers into such deep debt because of the royalty collection from seed, where the price of seed jumped 17,000%. The seed was unreliable, had to be bought 4 to 5 times a year. Indebted farmers in 3 years and 4 years ended up committing suicide. 291,000 farmers' suicides, according to government statistics. Most of them are in the cotton areas. 95% of the cotton is now GMO cotton. That's why I fight. And we create seed banks. We've brought non-GMO seed to the farmers, helped them go organic. And organic farmers are earning 10 times more than the farmers growing BT cotton. A monoculture of Roundup-resistant soya or corn is a recipe for malnutrition because it kills everything green that would be a source of vitamin A and iron. Then they bring us golden rice, which is hundreds of % less efficient in bringing vitamin A. Or they bring us the GMO banana for iron enrichment in India, 7,000% less efficient than alternatives in biodiversity. Worse, they want to introduce a vitamin A super banana to Uganda next year. They're already rushing human trials in the United States. 12 students are being paid $900 to eat 3 bananas. I don't know where this is called science. And then they attack Dr. Seralini's 2-year study that the sample wasn't large enough. Well, the more interesting thing is the iron enrichment in the GMO banana has been taken from a native banana in Micronesia. It's a case of biopiracy. In fact, all of genetic engineering is based on biopiracy. Monsanto did not invent the soya bean whose patents it holds, or the corn. Corn came from Mexico. Soya came from Eastern Asia. The cotton came from India. Everything is pirated. And then they act as creators because a patent is granted for an invention. Seed is not invented by Monsanto. Seed is our heritage. Seed is the first link in the food system. And to have food security, food sovereignty, and food freedom, we must have seed sovereignty and seed freedom. That's why I spent the last 30 years saving seeds, reclaiming seed in the commons, so that farmers can have access to seed, especially in these times of climate change. Interestingly, they too, the Monsantos of the world say we are inventing climate resilience. I'm going to leave these reports with you, Simone. This is the biopiracy of climate-resilient crops. We have in our seed bank salt-tolerant, flood-tolerant, drought-tolerant seeds. All that the companies do is steal the seeds from the seed banks and gene banks, put one toxic gene, and take control. That is why a very important aspect of the green politics of food is to end the patents on seed, which should never have started in the first place, and reclaim our common heritage for the future. Royalty collection was always the one and only objective of genetic engineering. I was at a meeting where the company said this in 1987. And now that there are movements growing, the ecological agriculture movement, they're trying to establish their monopoly through something new. by preventing seed saving. You know the European Seed Law, the Plant Propagating Act of last year, which the Greens sent back to the European Commission. And we worked with the Greens in European Parliament. In the US, little seed banks with 30 varieties are being sued by the government. You can't save seeds, old seeds, ancient seeds, because it is a source of agri-terrorism. The real source of agri-terrorism is imposing GMOs on the world which doesn't want them. Reference was made repeatedly to the spraying of glyphosate and Roundup. The data is now coming out that glyphosate is killing all the soil organisms, killing our gut bacteria, blocking the processes through which the neurotransmitters work in our brain. And that is why the epidemic of autism. And what all scientists are saying, we must investigate more. One of the most important threats that is coming to Europe is the attack on the precautionary principle that has been in place for biosafety. And you, as the Greens, must defend that precautionary principle. There is a systematic attack on every independent scientific research and scientist, whether it were Radpat Putsai or Seralini or Irina Ernikova of the Russian Academy of Sciences. But it's not just an attack on science, it's also an attack on democracy. You might have heard that more than $100 million was poured into the states in the United States of Washington, California, Oregon, and Colorado to block labeling, which we have as a right. In India, we have mandatory labeling. In Europe, you have mandatory GMO labeling. The US citizens don't. Vermont got a labeling law through. The corporations are now suing Vermont for labeling, and the argument is we as corporations are persons. Not legal entities, but persons. And if people know what they're eating, then it's taking away our freedom of speech. This is a legal case in the Vermont courts right now against the state of Vermont, which passed the law because the people pressurized them. 4th of November, US had its election. A little county in Hawaii voted to ban GMOs because they are growing GMO seeds on the island and spraying, and children are getting cancer. So we don't want GMOs. Monsanto has just sued them, again on this issue of free speech. They began with free trade. They've ended up with free speech. So the issues of food are not just about what we eat. They are existential issues about who is a being. And at a moment, just at the point of history and evolution, where we are all working to say, this planet is not just about human beings, it's about the animals, it's about the plants, it's about the soil organisms, it's about the pollinators and the bees that are being pushed to extinction. Just at that time, a new structure is being attempted to be created to say there are no species that have any rights, and there are no human beings with rights, only a fiction of a person, a legal entity transformed into personhood has rights. This is at the foundation of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. Those issues of investor-state suits is about corporations suing governments that protect their people according to the Constitution. Now, if this goes through, if these issues of corporate personhood and corporate rights go through, there is no democracy, there is no constitution, there is no survival, there is no ecological stability, there is no living planet. That is why it is no more a luxury to put food